It's Devora Krasnianski from Adai. Tonight's call is about the gentle art of in-law relationships. We'll be talking with Basya Deitsch. She's a relationship coach for many years, dealing with all kinds of issues in all kinds of relationships, and we're very grateful to have Basya here tonight. So
thank you so much for having me.
So tonight we're talking about in-law relationships. It's a pretty touchy topic. You know, your spouse's parents cared and loved for them and your children, and yet you're the newcomer into the family, and you're not yet familiar with their brands of love and concern. So there's always a learning curve of how to blend you together as a family. And there'll be times that the parents-in-law do things or say things to you or your spouse or your children that bother you. So what can be done to foster a loving in-law family relationship? That's what we'll be talking about tonight. And tonight we're focusing on the role of the child-in-law. Not to say that there isn't something to possibly say to the in-law, to the parents-in-law, but we're talking to the children-in-law. So let's just jump right in.
Perfect. As a matter of fact, I'd like to just add that although we are talking to the in-law, you know, much of what we'll be discussing really can apply on all ends in so many relationships.
Okay, great. So let's just jump right into the topic. Firstly, Basya, would you say that this is more of an issue with daughters-in-law or sons-in-law, or is it pretty much equal?
Well, the famous quote, a son is a son until he takes a wife, but a daughter is a daughter all of her life. You know, what can we expect? Studies show that in-law relationships that present challenges, the majority were with the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law. Clearly, it's a woman's issue in the in-laws. And then we even see this in the Gemara. There's a whole page, a discussion, you know, dedicated to why is it that the mother-in-law hates her daughter-in-law and why is it that the daughter-in-law hates her mother-in-law.
Okay, so even though we're talking now, saying that it's mostly daughters-in-law, there sometimes are sons-in-law issues, and so it's worthwhile for sons-in-law to be learning and listening to these ideas as well, right?
Of course.
So what are some of the typical issues? What might be happening for the in-laws, the parents-in-law, that they're doing whatever it is that they're doing? What might be happening, and then on the flip, what might be happening for the child-in-law that are getting upset by those actions?
So let's take a look for a minute. Most of the complaints we hear from mothers-in-law and things that they're feeling are that they're disrespected and misunderstood. They want so much to help out, and their help isn't always welcome. They feel shut out of their child's life. They may make a suggestion, and it's taken as criticism. And commonly from the daughters-in-law, we hear they feel criticized, and they're undermined. They feel like they're constantly being judged, and the parents-in-law or mother-in-law is meddling in her life, and you know, they drop in unexpected or say unwelcome comments. And so what might be happening here? What is it that's, you know, making these feelings so common in these mother-in-law, daughter-in-law relationships? Imagine the daughter-in-law, for example, from her perspective. She dates a young man, and she's all excited. They decide to get married because they're wonderful together, and they have dreams of starting a life together and setting up home. And suddenly she gets married, and she enters the relationship hoping and dreaming of being the exclusive woman in her husband's life. She wants to please him, and suddenly she discovers that she's competing with a woman. And who is this woman? The woman who nurtured and raised her husband since birth and knows him so well and has been so involved with him. In addition to that, when it comes to perception of women, for her husband, his mother has been the role model. You know, that's the woman he knows, and that's, you know, what his expectations, so to speak, would be gauged by. The home of his upbringing is the blueprint of his expectations. That's what he knows, the way things should be. So, and this can affect so many areas in their lives. So the state of housekeeping, how the house is run, where things are placed, and how things should be set up, how clean should the house be. It can affect the meals, you know. Does she cook a 5-star dinner every night, or is she spending too much preparing dinner? And even sometimes something like personal appearances. The husband might say to his wife, "You're going out like that? My mother never left the house that way." Or, "Why don't you wear heels? Isn't that what all women do?" And his mother always wears heels, you know. And not always said in a negative way. It just is what he's used to. And then later on, when the children come around, often we see this, the expectation of how children are raised. The husband has an image of the way it was done when he was growing up by his mother. And so the expectations to adjust to things done differently can be very threatening for a new woman, a new wife coming into a family and knowing how to do it the way she has seen it and what she's used to and what comes naturally to her. And of course, during this time, the wife desperately needs constant reassurance that no matter what she's doing, she's worthy, she's competent, she's appreciated, and just valued for who she is and what she's doing. So imagine, under the best of circumstances, her mother-in-law is a cloud hanging over her head. She sees her as a pre-existing standard by which she is judged. And often, she believes she can't measure up. The mother-in-law, on the other hand, she has her own set of issues. She is birthed and raised in this married son now, and day in, day out, watched him grow up and was involved in his life and, enjoyed a close, loving relationship. And although she has known that he's going to leave home and get married, she's not always prepared emotionally to let go, even though, the in-laws, she's delighted and prayed for this moment that her son will marry this beautiful, wonderful girl. But, there's always this occasional twinge. As a matter of fact, I've been a daughter-in-law for many years, but more recently a mother-in-law. And I really could relate to this particular thing. I'm used to being able to just pick up the phone and ask my kids, how was your day? What are you doing? Where are you? What's going on and how you feeling? And I have to hold myself back with two hands sometimes for picking up the phone and realizing and respecting that things are not the same, that there's a time and place now, and so the mother-in-law isn't always prepared for that or emotionally ready to let go, really. And for some, there's a vulnerability, will I still be able to maintain a close relationship with my child? They're genuinely worried about losing that connection. Will they maintain the values and norms that, that's embedded in their family? Like, will things start feeling strange? Will they be almost like a stranger in their child's home? And this is a natural feelings for in-laws to have. In some cases, there are some that, usually in a case where somebody, in-laws might be, advanced in age, that they see their daughter-in-law, she's young, she's vibrant, she's on the ascent, she's beautiful, has a whole life ahead of her. And in contrast, they're on the descent. Age is beginning to take a toll. We don't look so good. We don't feel as vital. And it's very hard. And just when they need most, affirmation and love and caring, the children are busy with their own lives and lives. So clearly we see her just naturally, no one's doing anything wrong. It's just the state of things are just the way they are and naturally create challenges just starting out. And we see this in examples, day-to-day examples. A daughter-in-law, for example, one particular woman said to me, she felt terribly anxious when her mother-in-law would just drop in on her all the time. It made her feel so uncomfortable when she saw the house in a natural state. She's her mother with kids and school and work, and the mother-in-law just drops off, and all just because she wants to spend time and be part of things. But again, with this preconceived notion that she's being judged, perhaps, and her mother-in-law's house is spotless and everything's orderly, so she feels like her mother's going to judge her, and it made her feel very uncomfortable. And perhaps there was sibling rivalry, or one of the kids is having a temper tantrum on the floor, and her mother's eyebrows will raise, in judgment, and it made her feel very uncomfortable by these surprise visits. And she once said to her mother-in-law, "Do you mind giving me a little heads up before you come?" And she just felt it would give her a little time to prepare. Her mother-in-law took this so personally and felt like, she doesn't want it to be part of her life. I can't just feel close anymore. And she actually stopped coming over until she was invited. And it really created a challenge in the relationship. And it was such a shame because the daughter-in-law actually enjoyed the visits. I mean, the mother-in-law she came and she was helpful. She, she played with the children. She was able to throw her up, the last thing for dinner. And she wanted her mother-in-law to be there, but this sense that she, was trying to, compare herself to her mother-in-law or worried that she was being judged by her mother-in-law's standards, made her feel that she needed to present the house a certain way. And when she requested that, it was taken by the mother-in-law in a way that was offensive and uninviting. And on the mother-in-law's end, how many times does the mother-in-law wants to help out? And she comes across in fault-finding. What she says, with good intentions, many times is taken with criticism. One woman actually shared with me that also her mother-in-law would come in and visit her all the time, and they were very happy to have her. But once her mother-in-law said to her husband, you got to get a cleaning lady to come over. Of course, the daughter-in-law took this as a blatant disapproval of her housekeeping. She just felt that was so rude and judgmental, and she was really upset at her mother-in-law. She couldn't understand, how could she have said something she tried so hard and that she judged her in such a way. And it was only years later when she really got to understand and have a more casual relationship with her mother and learned the skills that hopefully today we'll be sharing and learning here, that she actually learned that really her mother-in-law had a cleaning lady all the years helping her. And at that time, when her mother-in-law made that suggestion, she said it to her husband. So she felt like not only is she undermining me, she's telling my husband how bad I am, when in fact her intention was only to say to her husband, you got to get this lady some help. It's so unfair. She works so hard. She's busy with the kids. She works all day out of the house. She comes home and then she has to clean the house too. This is a lot for one person, and it's your responsibility, as she said to her husband, to get her help. So clearly we see that this is something that is just naturally things that we deal with, and often with really good intentions and no ill intentions.
Wow, there's a lot there.
Yeah.
So many nuances that we don't even think about when we walk into a relationship like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So what are some of the fundamental understandings that children-in-law and their spouses, meaning the children of the in-laws, should recognize about this in-law relationship?
Well, there are three that I would like to highlight that I think are very useful, helpful. One, a husband and wife must present a united front. The second one is respecting in-laws and having compassion goes a long way. And the third one I'd like to talk about today is you cannot change your in-laws. You can change yourself. So let's take a look at that. The husband and wife must present a united front. From the outset, it is so important to make it very clear that we come first. There's nothing else that will come in the way of us. We are united, we're one, and we are on the same page. And it's important that we both get on the same page about things. And, I said that from the outset this is important. Some of us listening tonight are married for years, so is this, there's no hope for us? No. We're all starting every day anew. This is a beginning for all of us. We all have an opportunity to start and begin our relationship in a better way and in a more rewarding way. So this can apply even if we're married for years. We need to start, we need to sit down and realize that we are a unit, and we want everyone to see that. It's going to be obvious, no matter, without even saying anything, that we're a very strong unit that cannot be divided. We don't take sides. Nobody can separate us and split us. And, because, I'm going to be using the term mother-in-law and daughter-in-law just because it's easier, but it really does apply to all the in-law relationships. So, a husband should always put his wife first and support her and assure her, and be a good buffer, endear her to your parents. So when you see that there's a situation that seems uncomfortable or strange, get in, jump in, change the topic, lighten it up. You know your parents, and be there to show that you and your wife are there together as one, and you're going to be there to make sure that she's good and safe. Listen and try to understand her. When she talks to you about the situation, don't try to defend your parents at this time. Remember that you are one, and this is the circle that matters now. The parents are outside of that. So right now, be present in this. Listen, accept, understand what she's trying to see where she's coming from. At the same time, though, the wife should be very sensitive when discussing her spouse's family. Realize this is his family. Try to understand his parents and don't assume that your families are the same. Genuinely sit with your spouse and try to ask him questions and try to understand how is it that they do things so that you can better understand them. And know that by honoring your in-laws and accommodating your partner's family, it's one of the greatest gifts you can offer in your marriage. This will help you be a stronger unit and present yourselves as one together. We're so used to putting up with our own families and accommodating their quirks. Why can't we do the same for him? We should. You know, our families sometimes ask us to do the most ridiculous things or make comments, and somehow we let that slide. We should try to do the same for our spouse's family. It's so important that together we sit down and we discuss our values. We need to mindfully articulate them and, most importantly, live by them. And sometimes spouses say, how can I get my husband to understand what how to get on the same page as me? Use the same love you got him to marry you, to get him on the same page as you. If we can go back and remember that we love each other and we want to build something beautiful together, we'll figure out how to get him on the same page, and together try to be kind to each other and compromise and each, come up with something that each one knows what's important to the other and respect that. And when we do know what our values are, and for example, we can take a look at each of our families and see what are the things that we loved growing up, what are the things that were important, that our parents did so well that we would like to bring into our own homes on both sides, and figure out how you're going to do them, and set boundaries based on that. And when you live by them, it's very clear to everybody that these are untouchable, that they're non-negotiable. They won't be issues of contention because you're both on the same page and you're clear about them. And so, for example, if you have a policy in your home that the children only watch Jewish movies, so if the mother-in-law takes the children over to her home, and she wants to watch the movies, that's a clear thing. You're both on the same page. It's a clear boundary. The children can only watch Jewish movies. You don't have to feel bad or think 10 times about how you're going to say it or how it's going to be received, because this is something that's clear. It's obvious. Your mother-in-law sees in the way you live that this is something that's important to you and that you actually live by, and that it's a non-negotiable. On the other hand, if perhaps you don't generally like to give the children sweets before dinner time, and your mother-in-law shows up, and somehow this always happens when she shows up. She has her candies, her once-a-week visit, and you haven't yet fed the kids supper, and she's gonna, she's handing out the candies, and the kids are running over to collect not just one. Of course, it always comes in multiples, and you just want to pull your hair out of your head and say, no, they're not going to eat their dinner. I don't want to do this. But is this something that is a value for you that you just can't let slide this time? Allow yourself to know what are the things that are absolutes and which things don't matter so much. And one particular woman said to me that was a very important value for her. She had an illness, and she had undertaken to eat differently to prevent it from happening, and she saw very clearly how food in her life was something that was a very, very important thing, and so she changed over her entire house. Everything she bought, she read the labels, and she fed her family and her husband and herself consistently a certain way. So it was very clear and very obvious that they do not eat sugar. They do not eat lollipops. And so there was nothing to worry about. If the mother-in-law knew that this is not something that's an option, instead she brought over treats from the dollar store, so that was something that the daughter-in-law kindly was able to tell her, this is a value, this is something that it's a boundary we do not give the kids. And they were able to work something out kindly and clearly. But if, the daughter-in-law just had a craze. One day she's, it's a no-sugar diet this week, and then she has an attack on her mother-in-law for giving out lollies, and then next week she's off that. Clearly that wasn't a value, and I like to use a scale here. It's helpful to have a scale from 1 to 10, and ask yourself, where on the scale does this issue that's presenting itself fit in? Is this something that if it's a 7, clearly this is something, that we as a couple have discussed, and it's something that's important to us, and we live by this value, and it's not something that I can let go, and I need to deal with it. But if it's a 6 or a 5, as we said, handing out the lollies before dinner time, perhaps that's something we don't need to make an issue out of, and we can let it slide more easily, as long as we present this clearly and we're united on this. The second point that we discussed was respecting in-laws and having compassion. It goes a long way. Remember that our in-laws, they're people. If we can look at them that way, that they have a history, they've experienced life, it helps tremendously. We need to take the time to get to know them. I mean, ask your partner, check with him, what are the family customs? Will his mother, for example, expect a hostess gift when you come over? So you'll know. You bring flowers or bring a box of chocolate. What do they like to eat? It's so helpful. If your in-laws are coming over, wouldn't it be nice if you knew what to prepare for them, if they are on a no-sugar diet or they can only eat soft foods, or if your mother likes a particular chocolate cake for dessert? Learn what they like. And it's helpful to understand, for example, what's their sense of humor like? Ask these questions, because sometimes, their family has some kind of sense of humor that everybody knows in the family is hysterical, and you get offended every time they make these jokes. But if you recognize that you've gotten to know that this is their style, it's got, you can be more relaxed around it. Very important. Find out what topics to avoid. There are always some hot topics in the family that you're better leaving alone. If you know, for example, that your mother-in-law had a very difficult relationship with her mother, you need not sit and talk about how wonderful your relationship with your mother is all the time. That might be something that's uncomfortable for her. For some, politics is a no-no. It's good to know these things, and you can have more respect then, and it's kind to be aware of these things. And remember that they might be opposite of your family. Yours might be quiet and private, have some little get-togethers once in a while, and your husband's might be a boisterous family with all these gatherings and get-togethers. They hug each other, they kiss each other on both cheeks, and something that you may not be very used to, but learn to go with it. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. It's kind. Respect their principles. Again, ask what's important to them and value them. For example, is spending holidays together important to them? See if you can accommodate that. Are they a family that appreciates once a week having dinner together? It's hard. As a matter of fact, my mother-in-law used to do this, and looking at it, it's a wonderful thing she did. Every Wednesday, last summer, she was a wonderful woman. She had Wednesday night dinner in her house. And she worked really hard. She had to cook dinner for all the children and grandchildren, and we turned the house upside down when we came, and she wanted so badly. This was something that was important to her, that the children should spend time, and the grandchildren. And I have to tell you, as a daughter, this wasn't always easy for me. Sometimes I felt like, it's snowing, it's cold, and I have to stick the kids in snowsuits and throwing the schedule off, So much easier for me just to feed them, a bowl of cereal tonight and throw them in the bath, send to bed, and to have to deal with that. But I knew that this was a value, that this was something that was very important to her, and we wouldn't miss it. It meant so much to her, and ultimately gave us so much. The children, we all have such good memories from those Wednesday nights. It's important to, step out of your comfort zone for them. Yeah, even sometimes your parents prefer that you come into their home dressed a certain way. If to them wearing a button-down shirt is something that they care about by dinner table, or not coming with flip-flops and wearing shoes, so do it. It shows respect. It shows that you're caring about what's important to them, and respect their decisions and perspectives, even if you disagree with them. Sometimes you do have a different perspective, and you're going to come to a different decision, but you don't always have to share it. And when they're sharing theirs, you can genuinely look at them and listen to them and honor them and understand that they've come to these decisions because it works for them, and perhaps they have these perspectives because their life, their history perhaps made them see things from this angle, and you can honor that and just leave it be. And be compassionate. Don't criticize your partner's family. Rather ask for an explanation for things that you don't understand. That's okay. It's understandable that there will be things that seem odd or difficult, and ask kindly, to understand them. Be polite. And don't take their comments and reactions personally. you may not understand them as they were intended. So again, if you took the time to get to know them and their humor and the way they do things, it's more likely that you'll be less sensitive and take things personally and, be surprised by the reactions. And don't assume that they know how you feel, because they might not have a clue. And try to understand their vulnerabilities. If you know that your mother-in-law is bothered by not, or worried that she's not going to be involved in her son's life, and she has so much less time with him, be sensitive to that. Include her. Make special times for her. To spend time with all of you, and suggest to your spouse, why don't you go over to your mother and spend time with her now? Now is a good time for me. I need to do this now, so it would be a perfect time. Go spend time with your mother. It'll mean so much to her. Encourage it. Be kind. And do it because it's the loving thing to do. It's generous and surely promotes peace. The third fundamental thing is to understand is can't change your in-laws. You can't change yourself. So accept the reality. I mean, sometimes you have these dreams about being buddy-buddy with your mother-in-law, and you're going to go shopping and cook together, and you have, these romantic ideas about how things should be. And then you realize it's not the case. It's not the way your mother-in-law is. You can't shop with her. She doesn't want to. She likes her own time, her own space, and is not interested. Accept that as a reality. And sometimes it's the other way around. You're a private person, and you really want to do everything alone, and you like to do things independently. And you have a family here who loves to be involved and be part of things and know what's going on. And so accept the reality that is the way they are, and that there are times that you will need to include them, and that they will be part of things. And be proactive in the relationship. That you can change what you can change. So be a person who thinks about how can I get ahead of the situation and be more control in things that I can be control of, because that I can do. I can't control other people. So, for example, one particular person I worked with had a difficult situation with her mother-in-law, and they used to spend weekends together, every weekend together in the summers. They shared a home, and they struggled a lot. The mother very much wanted things to be done a certain way, and as much as she tried, she often felt like she couldn't do it right, or it was very difficult to constantly be on for a full weekend. And this was happening repetitively, week over week after week. And she said to me, I can't take it anymore. And I said to her, can you change the reality in the house? Are you going to change your mother? You can't. This is her house. This is the way she wants it. She made it very clear this is the way things are going to be. And, even without judgment, she probably has the best reasons that she needs it that way, perhaps. But this is the reality. So now what can you change? You can change something yourself. You don't have to go every week. And that was something she thought of. Maybe I should go once a month. Maybe I can go twice a month and spend Shabbosim in other places, or just stay home and have more space to do things the way I'm comfortable. And this does have a trickle effect, because naturally the mother-in-law wanted to know why it is that the daughter-in-law is choosing to not spend every weekend together anymore. And this gave her an opportunity to politely say to her mother-in-law that I realize that there are things that you like a certain way in your home, and I want to respect that, but for me it's difficult to do that every single weekend, so I choose to stay home or go to other places so that I can, have a chance to do things on the weekends in the way that I'm comfortable with. And it made her mother think, and she wants to have her over, that maybe she would be a little more accommodating and, take us a back seat on certain things. But so clearly, when we change ourselves, there's no doubt that we have, there's potential for there to be a trickle effect and other things to change. I mean, naturally, if you're sitting on a boat and you walk to the other side of the boat, you're going to shift the boat. I mean, you can tip the boat if you go to the other side sometimes. So changing ourselves and being proactive can have a tremendous effect on the relationship. And we need to ask ourselves, do we get offended easily? If we do, work on getting tough skin. That's something you could change. Things will slide more easily, and we can respond in a healthier way that way. And sometimes we think about, we're so burdened by this already. Like the in-laws are just killing us. Our whole life is taken over by this. We're feeling controlled and undermined and judged, and it's trickled into the relationship with our spouse and even our children, and whether the grandparents could come or can't come, and we feel like we've totally lost control, and we're not running our ship anymore. We're not running the show. And so there are ways that we could accomplish this, and by strengthening ourselves and realizing that we can do things differently. So some of the things that we can do to help this is, one good tip is, no, it's not about you. If we can remember this over and over again, this statement, know that it's not about you. This is when you're criticized by your mother-in-law, instead of seeing her as a malicious person trying to hurt you, you might see a threatened and insecure individual instead. Maybe it's due to ill health or lack of fulfillment. I mean, imagine, when we're not feeling great, we know that sometimes we're edgy. Somebody might say something innocent, and we can just, bite back. And we really have no intent. No, we've never intended to do that. We're just feeling so uncomfortable inside our body. We're aching. And for many of our in-laws, this is something that's is constant. It's not going away. Their health is compromised, and sometimes they are lacking fulfillment. They have an empty home, and they've suffered a loss. They're sad. They're lonely. Knowing their weaknesses can give us the ability to also preempt these negative things. So if our mother-in-law comes to us and criticizes us, and she's saying something nasty, imagine if we just would look at her and see that this is a person who is challenged and suffering. Why is it when a child sticks their tongue at us, we can just walk by and let it go? Because we know it has nothing to do with us. It's a child, a silly child, acting the way they do. And if you're at a bus station and some person is just yelling madly at you, you probably would look at them and get on the bus, and when the bus comes, get on the bus and while it winds away, look out the window and say, and leave it right out the window where he's standing, and know that the person has nothing to do with you. You don't get all bent out of shape. Why is it that when our in-laws say something to us, our mother-in-law, our first reaction is we fall apart, and we take it so personally, and we judge ourselves by it, and we feel so bad and controlled? It would be so much more helpful if we realize that it's not about us, and if we look at them and see what's missing there, that perhaps I can fill that need, and then I won't be dealing with these things. They'll feel so much better about themselves. So, if we can look at them and say, you know what, no wonder why she's constantly giving me advice, because she has no one to talk to. She has no one to value her anymore. She's done raising her children. Nobody cares. So she comes here and she's constantly trying to share her advice, and she feels so disrespected, because often we don't. We roll our eyes when our in-laws are doing that. But if we would look at them and say, they feel that nobody respects them or realizes they have a whole life full of experience and so much to offer. If we would just say to them before they even started giving us advice, what do you think about this? Or, how did you do this? Or tell me a little bit about your life, about your history. I would love to hear stories about how you grew up. We would do so much for them and ultimately for ourselves as well. But it would help us to not get so upset and bent out of shape when we realize that it's not about us. And I actually heard a beautiful insight. If you look out the window at night with the lights on, you'll see your own reflection. If you turn the lights off and the focus is no longer on you, you can see the world beyond. A broader and more expansive view becomes available. You're able to see the whole world outside of you. And it's so true. If you just step out of the situation, take yourself out of the situation, you're able to look at it and respond better and feel better. Another thing you can do to strengthen yourself and feel more in control is by judging your mother more favorably. And a great way to do this is learn to rewrite the narrative. It's a very, very good tip, and it's so helpful in changing the way we see things and how we respond to things. So when something's going on, ask, perhaps they had a bad day. They heard negative news. Maybe they just found out that they have an illness. Many in-laws don't want to burden us with all their things. They're private people, or they're things that they can't share, or they just had a really hard life and they don't want to talk about it, or we haven't yet found out about it. it would help so much to think about that when we're being approached by our mother-in-law, or, for example, one young woman was so frustrated when her mother-in-law, was meddling and telling her how to deal with the children. She's sitting right in the middle of telling her child, not to do something and to do it a different way. Her mother-in-law came in with, perhaps you should do this and it should be done like this, and she's involved in her parenting in the midst of her speaking to her child. So your knee-jerk reaction would be, oh my God, like, what is this? She's so bossy with a chutzpah, talking to my child, and she thinks she has a right to, meddle in my business and control and undermine me in front of my children, make me look so disrespected. How dare she? And often, resulting in negative feelings and sometimes really rude reactions. But if instead we can look at this person and realize that, she probably really has nobody to tell anything to, she raised all her children. There's no one she can share her good insights, her advice, her good experience with. She raised all her children. She does have a lot of experience. And she loves my children so much, and she wants to be involved in their lives. And if we can just say, this is a woman who actually loves my children so much, she has a lot of experience raising children, and she just wants so badly to share it. And if we would stop and look at her that way, we may actually stop and listen and say, that's interesting. Let me here, tell me more about that, and show her that you're actually listening and respect the fact that she has more experience. First of all, you may actually learn something, something that is valuable that you can apply. And if you can say to her, I'm going to discuss this with my spouse, and perhaps this is something that can work for us. Now, clearly that doesn't mean you have to go and discuss it with your spouse and then do it. This may not be something that you and your spouse want or think is right for your family, so just don't do it. You don't have to rub it in her face. Respect doesn't mean that you have to obey everything they say. But it's just having an awareness and compassion and kindness, and being able to, when you rewrite your story in this way, suddenly this is a person that you can help. That she's needing a forum to share her wisdom. And when you say to her, thank you for sharing that. That's something to consider. Not only have you made her feel so wonderful, but think of this from another angle. Your child is watching, and I'm sure the first thing that you're thinking is, well, my child just sees that I've been disrespected, that what I say means nothing, and perhaps I don't know what I'm doing. But on the contrary, the child learns such valuable lessons from watching this, from what you've just demonstrated. They've seen that you don't get bent out of shape when someone has a different opinion than you, which is a tremendous skill. They see the respect you have for elders, which is something that you would want your children to learn, God willing, for yourself and for their future. You've learned that it's okay to listen to other people and to take their ideas into consideration. I mean, and how kind you were and considerate of your mother-in-law. So you've taught them so much more by valuing her as a person, by using the skill of taking yourself out of the situation, rewriting the story, and responding in such a beautiful way. I saw a cute thing. If you take the word responsibility and you divide it into two, respondability. You have the ability now to respond in a responsible way. You respond in a peaceful and healthy way that only enhances the relationship. So these are the things that I believe that if you and your husband are on the same page, and you have the same values, and you respect your in-laws and have compassion for them, and realize that you can only change yourself and strengthen yourself, they can be tremendous in your relationships in all areas.
Wow. So, Basya, this question came in. Sometimes you said that you should be on the same page with both spouses, but sometimes you kind of put your spouse in a precarious place by having to balance his loyalties to his parents and to his wife. And what do you advise to the sons, or maybe could use a metaphor of mother-in-law, daughter-in-law? What do you advise to those sons specifically?
It's a great question. I mean, like I said, I'm just using the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law as an example here, just easier. So it, of course, applies to all. But that's a great question. But we know the famous quote from the Torah, Therefore shall a man leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife. It's as clear as day. The son has to remember that he has left the home of his parents, his father, his mother, their ways, their styles, their opinions, and now it's time to cleave to his wife. She is what comes first. She matters. What bothers her is more important right now. And it's so, so important for him to assure her and encourage her that these are his feelings and that she is the most important woman in his life and that what she cares about matters so much. And encourage her to share her feelings and concerns. And don't take things personally. Validate what she's feeling. You know, it's so easy to want to defend the in-laws, your parents, to your wife, and to, you know, blame your wife for misunderstanding or always being, you know, so sensitive. But from your perspective, you have so much more to gain from showing her that you validate that she was hurt and it's really hard for her, and that it's got to feel tough to constantly have to, you know, have, you know, let's say my mother telling you what to do or how to do it. Let her know that what she's doing is wonderful and that she should, you know, you respect the way she's doing things, and that's wonderful, and that you adore her and she's number one in your life. And it goes such a long way in keeping the peace, you know. Sometimes you think you must come up with a whole plan and a defense and explain your parents and what they really meant and get into the whole detailed story. But if you can sometimes just listening in this manner and really assuring her that you are with her and not even trying to defend your parents will keep the peace. Sometimes this is enough. And she can just, oftentimes the wife can just go on and let it slide. I mean, because she has your support, she has your insurance, you built her up, you made her feel like she's great, and it doesn't, and then she's fine and she's good to go. So it's so powerful, you know. And if this is something that is regularly done, it gives you also an opportunity at a certain time then to show her what they're like, and she'll believe you when you try to explain to her at another time, at a time when she's not heated up or feeling bad, what their style is like, you know, their humor or what they mean when they say certain things. She'll be so much more opening to hearing and learning and understanding their ways, and even being accepting if you are very clear that she is the one that is first and matters most, you know, and if that doesn't work, you know, so come up with a plan together that you're both comfortable with. Be open to listening and trying to come up with a solution. You know, like we said, you have a united front. That was an important factor. Together, discuss your values, discuss what matters, and how you would address them. You know, and of course, as a last resort, like, you know, we know that, you know, we don't change our in-laws, we can change ourselves, but sometimes things do need to be addressed. And so you may need to offer that you would approach your parents to discuss an issue.
So is it best that the child of the parent, like in this case, like the son, bring it up to his parents, or the daughter-in-law can, or how can we go about bringing up something that's upsetting to the daughter-in-law or against the values of the couple that put together?
Yes, that's definitely a good question. The child of the offending in-law, he knows them best. He has a lot more experience communicating with them. He understands what makes them tick. Definitely, that would be ideal.
But sometimes in the expressing of it, it may come out that he may say it, or put it this way, what might he say that his wife looks in the best light? You know, saying that she's upset about something. Are there any particular words or language that he can use?
Yes. So basically, what are the best ways a spouse can make the request of his parents? Well, of course, most importantly, respect, love, and sensitivity is key. And always make a request. You know, don't come with attacks and complaints and criticism. When you prepare yourself that you genuinely visualize them, that you have tremendous respect for them, love them, feel the love, and be sensitive. When you make a request, it'll come across. So he can say something like, "Mom, you know, can you do me a favor? You know, we love having you over, but need time to prepare for your arrival. We want to ensure that we have adequate time to devote to you. Can you please let me or my spouse know before you come visit?"
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And sometimes, this is the way the daughter-in-law approaches her husband can be a tremendous help in her husband's receiving of it, and then how perhaps he may present it to his parents. So that's also very, very important. How might she bring it up to her spouse? What her parents are doing that makes her uncomfortable, and then this would automatically, the trickle effect is tremendous in how it gets followed through all the way. So I think it's very important the way the woman presents it to her spouse, and remembering that you're talking about your spouse's parents, even though he puts, you first, and you know all that, but criticism is hard to hear when it's about your family. So it's so important to be sensitive, and so that'll be well received, because the natural, it's a knee-jerk reaction when you say something negative that there's going to be, the defenses go up. And if you want to avoid that, be clear that, let him know that you care about them, and they most likely mean well. And certainly here it's important to remember the same thing. Rather than, make a complaint, make a request. Say, rather than say, I won't have your parents drop in unannounced anymore, they're so rude, they're so insensitive, and saying nasty things, try asking, can you request of your parents to let us know ahead of time, when they would like to visit, because when they show up unannounced, it makes me uncomfortable, and I don't have a chance to prepare and clean up properly. Notice how that sounds differently, So clearly, we're requesting in a way that our spouses can receive this, and when if our going further down, if it does come to the point where the spouse will request it of his parents, it'll be passed on the same manner, because that's how it was received. There's a sense that there's love, there's respect, there's just something that we want to request, and it comes across so much more accepting, and make I statements, rather than saying, oh, your mother comes and she criticizes my cooking in my house, how dare she? Perhaps you can choose to say, I was really hurt when your mother said my roast was overdone. I try so hard to make the foods that she likes, and, it's important for me to accommodate her, and then when she says something like that, it makes me feel so bad, and it makes me feel like I didn't do anything to prepare and be gracious. Another good one is, don't use words like always or never. Like, oh, your mother always criticizes me. She never shows appreciation for what I'm doing. Because firstly, it'll take the conversation to a whole different direction of, oh, does she really? Do you remember the time she did this? That wasn't appreciation. She always does this. Why? She's been here last time. That didn't happen, and that's not really where you want this to go. You just want to try to deal with a particular situation that, for you feels recurring, and you want to be clear that, how can we come up with a way, with a united front, with love and compassion, and not being sensitive, but being, remember, a person who has built themselves up and has tough skin and realizes that there's something that's lacking there, but how can we address a situation that's not working so well in a way that will be received? And this, first of all, this approach will make your spouse more receptive to supporting you in this effort. And then when he does approach his parents, naturally, that's the message that will come through when your spouse approaches them. So they're kind of interrelated.
So thank you, Beth.
Sure.
A lot of questions came through, and I'm trying to kind of pull out the ones that are more general, and perhaps we can address those other questions individually or some other way. Mm-hmm. But one question, if my mother-in-law didn't heed the request that I said so nicely to my husband, and he said so nicely to her, what might I do in the moment if it's something that's really of value?
Ouch. Right? So again, first we want to think about all the things that we've spoken about, right? Number one, forgive, because remember when we, the biggest gift we can give to our relationship is honoring our in-laws and being, kind and letting things go. And like we said, we want so badly to have our in-laws, in our lives for our children. It's a tremendous thing to have that. And I always think about that when this kind of a question comes up, like, oh, what am I going to do when they're not listening? You know, I grew up without grandparents in my life. I mean, they lived far, and they weren't very much a part of our lives because of the distance in those days. I mean, that really ages me. But we made a phone call once a month to Australia or to Israel. That wasn't something that was commonly done. So just the mere distance didn't give us a taste of what really grandparents are like. But I was I was lucky enough that I married into a family that, thank God, grandparents are very much a part of my husband's life. And suddenly I was enlightened. I saw, wow, like how much richer it can be to have more people in your children's lives that love them and are just so easy with them and accepting, and more people to give support and sometimes advice, sometimes unsolicited, but many times things that we can listen to and learn from. And it's a tremendous thing to have them in our lives. And so when we can have that whole picture of all the things that we've discussed just now about being caring and understanding and seeing them, you know, judging them favorably and trying once again to rewrite the narrative, look at the situation right now again, step out of the situation, look at it with a broader view and try to rewrite that maybe she had a hard day and all the things that we've discussed, you know, that really, really can be so helpful, that, you know, how can I help her in the situation? You know, and that would be a tremendous thing that we can do first. But sometimes there really is a situation that comes up, and you said it. Perhaps it's something that it's a value, something that has been overstepped, a boundary that we've set, you know, that has not been heeded to, so to speak. So, for example, your children went over to your in-laws' house, and you find out that she showed them a non-Jewish video. That's a big no-no. You know, you, together with your spouse, made that something that's a value in your home. You made that a very clear boundary that cannot be, you know, overstepped, and that's something that does need to be addressed. So there are times that we do have to, you know, actually face it and deal with it. So, you know, I actually heard something interesting from Mary Adai, and I like it. She says, whatever you can say in 5 words or less is very good. So keep it short if you can. So, you know, sometimes it's a comment, for example, that just was said in the moment that wasn't kind or that really, really did get to you and you're not able to, you know, let it go. So you can use examples of what's a sentence you can say that's under 5 words. You know, that's not comfortable for me. That's something that can apply to so many different situations. You can use that. Or, you know, what did you mean by that? You know, sometimes they say something really feels hurtful or wrong in the moment, and you just can't seem to get past it. And you could just ask them, you know, what did you mean by that? Give them an opportunity to explain themselves. They realize perhaps that you misunderstood them, and it gives them a chance to explain themselves on the moment and diffuse the situation. And you can say something like, you know, I can take that a couple of ways, you know. Can you explain, you know, because sometimes someone says something and it can be meant in so many different ways. So, you know, like I said, what did you mean by that, you know? And like, for example, with the videos, you know, you may need to say to your in-laws, that just won't work for me. And you know, let's no more videos, you know, keep it simple. And at that, you know, and sometimes, you know, if you really, really need this, you feel there's a need for more than just that quick, you know, little sentence. Hopefully, those are things that can easily diffuse a lot of situations. And you know, where you're in a situation that you really feel you need to say something. If you feel that that's not enough, and you really do need to, you know, sit down and have more of a talk or discuss the situation, remember to be very specific about the behavior and why it bothers you. Don't criticize the person, and don't, you know, be judging or mean about it. You know, try to bear in mind all the things that we've discussed about how to look at them and how to be strong ourselves and not sensitive types, and honoring, you know, the in-laws, what a gift it is to the relationship. So you'll be specific about the behavior and why it bothers you, and use I statements, like we said, and stay away from always and ever. So, for example, like you might want to say, you know, I feel bad when you correct me in front of the children. It undermines my authority, and it makes it very difficult for me to regain their respect. You hear how that sounds a little bit easier to take, or, you know, and you know, when you're in a healthy place, which hopefully by now, having implemented all these wonderful things and practiced them well and thoroughly, sometimes your mother will make an untrue or snide remark about your husband. Your husband was never so thin when I had him in my care, and in a healthy place, you might just say, oh, but of course, nobody's as good a cook as you are, and laugh and have a chuckle, and move on. So that's a wonderful way that we can more easily just let it go, say what we need to say, and have a good sense of humor about it.
And good evening. Why don't you sum this up in 3 sentences?
See, most of us are blessed with kind and compassionate in-laws. We just need to work together to smooth out the rough edges. By staying on good terms with your spouse's relatives, you're honoring and promoting your relationship in one of the best possible ways. Matzah tzlacha. I hope this was helpful.
This will be on the website, and you can check out this recording and other recordings as well at adaiad.org/past-events, as well as many other resources on our website at adaiad.org. That's all A's, adaiad.org. And thank you, Basya.
My pleasure.
And good night to everybody. Thank you.